Have you ever seen a blind person play the piano? Well, in this story, the main character was not only blind, but also didn't have arms and legs either. Yet despite these disabilities, he managed to become one of the most famous pianists in the world. How did this miracle happen? Stay tuned till the end to find out. When little Patrick Hughes was born, the doctors said he was the healthiest baby boy his mother had ever given birth to. But when he was 6 months old, something strange happened. The boy's legs stopped growing. Soon after, he started to squint and lost his sight completely. His parents were desperate to help their son. They took him to different specialists, but no one could explain why these things were happening to the baby. And then they got an answer. It turned out that Patrick suffered from a rare congenital disease called phocomelia. This meant that the bones of his arms and legs simply did not develop properly inside his mother's womb. The doctors gave the couple two options. They could amputate the deformed limbs or leave everything as it was. The parents chose the second option. After all, even without limbs, their son would still be able to live a full life. But little did they know that fate had other plans for Patrick. The boy grew up and became a real oddity in the neighborhood. People were afraid to approach him, believing that those who had a congenital disability couldn't possibly lead a normal life. When Patrick turned 10, his parents decided to enroll him in a regular school instead of a special one for children with disabilities. Everyone thought the boy wouldn't make it, but he proved them wrong. At first, he had to learn how to get to school. Every day, his dad accompanied him, teaching Patrick to navigate the streets by ear. Over time, the boy learned to memorize the routes and go to school alone. There was only one thing that saddened him. All the kids in class had a recess when they could run around the yard, but Patrick wasn't allowed to do that. The thing was, the boy had no idea where the playground was, and his classmates didn't want to take him there. He spent all his free time sitting on the windowsill, looking out into the world outside. One day, Patrick noticed people of all ages practicing piano in a music school across the street. Music sounded sad, angry, cheerful, and slow. Different pieces followed each other in a melody that touched the boy's soul. He fell in love with the piano. Then he went up to the window and knocked on it. The teacher on the other side was very surprised. She had never seen a blind and armless boy trying to get into the music school before. Patrick explained to her that he really wanted to learn to play the piano. Then the teacher did something unexpected. She opened the window and invited the boy inside. At first, Patrick struggled to understand what was going on. How could he play the piano if he couldn't see the keys or hold the necessary position? The teacher didn't offer him any shortcuts. Instead, she told him to start with the basics. At first, Patrick felt upset and misunderstood. Why was he being treated differently than the other students? Was the teacher just being kind, or did she see some potential in him? Whatever her thoughts, the boy was determined to succeed. So he listened carefully to every word she said and tried to follow her instructions. It was tough, but the boy's hearing was excellent. He could listen to the notes and reproduce them. In fact, he learned so fast that soon he was already playing several pieces by heart. But he knew that if he wanted to become a real pianist, he needed to practice more. The problem was, whenever Patrick came home, his mom made him spend several hours doing household chores. But the boy didn't want to argue, so he just kept quiet and did as he was told. However, after a while, he started to resent his mother for making him give up on his dream. Meanwhile, Patrick's father was very proud of his son. Whenever he came home from work, he would sit beside Patrick and listen to him play the piano. One day, the man brought his son a present, a music box that looked like a small grand piano. Patrick liked it so much that he started practicing on it right away. The boy played so well that his father burst into tears. From that moment on, Patrick Sr. began to spend all his free time teaching his son to play the music box. Together, they worked out special techniques that allowed Patrick to play the most difficult pieces. And when the boy got a bit better, his dad bought him a real piano. By that time, Patrick was already 17 years old, and one evening he invited his classmates to come over and listen to him play. The music sounded so soulful and powerful that everyone was shocked. The guests applauded enthusiastically and encouraged Patrick to pursue a career in music. Then something amazing happened. The local newspaper wrote an article about the talented young man, and soon the whole city knew about him. Everyone wanted to see the blind and armless pianist with their own eyes. That's why Patrick's concerts were always sold out. His father was happy to hear his son play in a packed stadium, knowing that he had overcome so much in life already. But Patrick himself had mixed feelings about his success. Sure, people liked listening to him, but he didn't know what it was like to play in front of an audience. One day, Patrick met a young woman named Lisa who helped him conquer his fear of the stage. She was a journalist who had read the article about him in the newspaper and decided to interview the boy. But she had no idea that she would fall in love with him and become his wife. When Patrick first saw her, he heard her heartbeat, and that scared him. Although he couldn't see anyone, he felt every move and breath of the people around him. And when Lisa approached him, he felt a surge of positive emotions. Soon, the two began dating, and Patrick was so happy. For the first time in his life, he could touch a woman's hand and feel her tenderness. No one else had ever dared to do that before. But most importantly, Lisa supported his work and helped him become a better pianist. She was his biggest fan and attended all his concerts. However, despite the success, Patrick continued to feel like a nobody. He was tired of people staring at him and whispering behind his back. That's why he decided to close his eyes during his performances. After all, if they came to listen to his music, why should they care that he was blind and armless? It seemed to Patrick that no one loved his music for what it was. They just pitied him because of his disability. Meanwhile, Lisa was very worried about her boyfriend. She knew that Patrick desperately needed to hear good words and encouragement. But one day she found out that he had run away from home. The girl immediately called the police, but they couldn't find him anywhere. As a last resort, she went to Patrick's house and asked his father if he knew anything. To her surprise, the old man said that his son had gone to perform in a small town not far away. But why did Patrick want to hide it from her? Did he think she wouldn't approve of his decision? The woman didn't know. All she could do now was buy a train ticket and rush to the concert hall. When she got there, the staff told her that the show was over. Patrick had played the same piece that had brought him fame many years ago. But this time, the audience hadn't applauded. Instead, they sat there motionless, holding their breath. Even after the last note faded away, no one moved for a long time. Then the silence was broken by applause. It was so loud and heartfelt that the hall shook, and Patrick stood up from the piano. To his surprise, he heard a familiar voice in the crowd shouting, "That was wonderful, Patrick." When the boy turned toward the sound, he bumped into Lisa and suddenly realized that he no longer wanted to hide from her. Let her see who he really was, a pianist who could move mountains with his music. So will Lisa stay with Patrick? Or was she just fascinated by his unusual abilities? What do you think? And that's all for today. See you next time.